Welcome to the Inside Carolina post-game live show brought to you by Blue Shark Vodka. Jason Staples here, Gregory Hall here, Ross Martin is in South Bend, Indiana, where UNC just lost to Notre Dame 44-34 in an unlikely shootout, maybe likely, definitely not a game that defensively UNC wanted. The offense looked great, but a couple costly mistakes that we'll get into. Jason, initial takeaways here.
Well, I look at 7.7 yards per play on the offensive side, and I go, wow, Carolina probably won that game.
Right.
All right, that's an offensive explosion. But only 34 points out of that 7.7 yards per play, so that means you're not making every drive count. And then you look over on the other side and you go, oh, 7.7 yards per play given up, and that's not good. So yeah, those are my first takeaways. Is basically this is not the game that Carolina wanted to see. It is not the kind of shootout that they wanted to be in, and it's certainly not what Jay Bateman and that defense prepared for the last couple weeks. So. Yeah, there's not much really more to take away than that. They're going to have to find some ways to get guys to make plays on the defensive side and stop blowing assignments, start actually tackling and getting guys on the ground, taking good angles, and right now they're not doing that, and that's after spending the last couple weeks focused on that.
If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, get your questions in. We'll answer those later in the show. Right now we're going to get into our 3 plays of the game. Not necessarily the 3 best plays, just the 3 most important that kind of happened throughout the game. Jason, start us off. Give me one really key play of the game.
Well, I think the play that blew this game open was really the 91-yard Kyron Williams run. This game, Carolina had every chance to win this game, really up to and actually a little bit even past that. But that was such a back-breaking play because you'd just gotten them backed up in the shadow of their own goalposts.
Yep.
And I can't remember, that was a second or third down run.
I believe it was first play of the game. First play of the drive.
Was it first? So first play of the drive then. Okay,
yeah.
That's even worse.
Sam Howell's punt trickled into the 9-yard line.
That's right.
And then it was just supposed to be a simple handoff to the right side that UNC had completely busted.
Yeah.
Or UNC wasn't busted. They had Kyron Williams dead to rights.
They had it bottled up, and all you have to do is finish in the backfield with good angles from everybody, and all of a sudden he breaks one tackle. And I want to go back and take a look at that because I do wonder whether or not there was some sort of lapse from the back end where it's like, oh, looks like he's going to go down. Sometimes you see that where a guy has a guy in the backfield dead to rights, and then you see a little bit of relaxing on the back end. I suspect somewhere you're going to see that where angles are not being taken. If you see the all-seeing eye looking down from the sky, when you look at that, there's going to be somebody who busted there. Got to take that angle. Got to finish in the backfield. Got to make tackles.
Yeah, and the thing about that, as far as assignments, the cutback was covered. Tamon Fox had him, and then he just gets stiff-armed into the ground.
You're 260 pounds. You cannot allow the running back to put you on the ground.
Literally. It was a great play by Kyron Williams. Nothing to take away from him, but that cutback was completely covered. And we talk a lot about UNC not being able to set the edge, which they showed tonight when Jack Cohn was running against them, and they weren't being able to set the edge. But they had the edge set, and even when the edge was set, still couldn't get it done. And then Kyron Williams' speed, even with Jeremiah Gimmel traversing the field and still trying to go stride for stride with him, Kyron Williams was too quick, couldn't get it done. And then right there was very quick, which leads into our second play of the game.
So the second one to me was actually the face mask call on Trey Morrison. It's a 4th down play. Right. So you get a stop on 4th down. The drive's over.
The coverage Chapman was in coverage.
Yeah, it's great coverage. Yeah, you did everything right. And you got a guy who, in the jam, he's putting his hand on the guy's chest, and his pinky finger basically.
Just like, boop.
Yep, can you do that again? Just caught, his pinky just caught the bottom edge of the face mask and just turned it just enough. And yeah, by the letter of the rule, you can call that. It's a defensible call.
It was a illegal play by Trey Morrison.
But man, is that a brutal call, and it's one that is understandable if there's a no call on that too. That's one. The spirit of the rule is, basically getting a guy to turn his head. It's a safety issue. That's not a safety issue there in terms of just your pinky gets stuck for a second, and then your hand gets back on the or your hand is properly on the chest to begin with.
Yep.
His hand just got a little high, and you go from a 4th down stop in a game where you didn't have a whole lot of stops on defense to giving up a touchdown on the next play. So that right there, and you lose by 10, and
we just talked about two plays that were 14 points that could have easily been. I mean, maybe Notre Dame scores on a 91-yard drive. I mean, they had long drives in this game, but I mean, a 91-yard touchdown is detrimental to anyone's confidence.
Detrimental is true.
I mean, right? And then you've got that where you've got a 4th down stop. It's a great stop. You give the ball back to your offense, and then they score a touchdown the very next play.
Yeah, and that, again, this Carolina team all year has not been able to get out of their own way. They've been in so many situations where they can take control of a game, and then they don't. They make a big play on the offensive side, and then the defense gives up a big play. Defense gets a stop. Offense has a chance to make a big play and take control of the game. That happens to be when the offense will turn the ball over. Over and over again all year, this team has not been able to build, and that's something that we were talking off camera. That's something Mac Brown has talked about all season, is the sides of the ball are not feeding off of one another in a positive direction. If anything, it goes the opposite way. When one side starts to struggle, the other side starts to press a little bit and struggle a little bit. So you're not seeing the kind of benefit of one positive play on one side or a touchdown on one side begets better defense on the other. You're just not getting the momentum building from both sides of the ball supporting each other.
And then our third play of the game, directly after that 91-yard touchdown run by Kyron Williams, Sam Howell uses bad eyes, bad read, doesn't look the safety, underthrows Josh Downs, and who's there to get the interception? The safety, and just that whole, I mean, it was really a compilation of 3 plays in a row.
Yeah.
Josh Downs dropped a ball that would have been a 1st down, then UNC has to punt, Kyron Williams goes 91 yards for a touchdown, Sam Howell throws the interception. Those 3 plays are basically the difference in the game.
That's where the game was decided. And Mac Brown has always said 3 to 5 plays determine every game.
Yeah.
Those 3 plays in a row determine this game. And that was an example where as a third-year starter, that was an inexcusable mistake by Howell, who played really well. Other than that tonight, he played a really good football game. But if he doesn't play perfect with the way that Carolina is playing around him, if Howell's not perfect, they're probably not winning. And that was a really bad mistake. It was just simple eye discipline, like you said. You've got to get your eyes to the safety. And Downs did the right thing. He understood that there was a single high safety there, and you're supposed to fade that out just a little bit from the slot, take that outside, take that away from the safety a little bit. If Howell throws that to the outside there,
touchdown,
that might score.
Especially with Josh Downs. I mean, he had a good 3 yards on the guy on his corner or nickel covering.
Yeah, he had at least a stride, and that guy's not running him down. No. So you've got a chance to score there. It's not a bad read. It's just bad eye discipline. And I'm not sure that Howell ever actually saw the safety, because he put that ball flat, and that's a throw that you...
Yeah, Josh would have caught it here rather than it needed to be over here to prevent the safety coming in.
That's a seam throw. So, that's one where if you think that there's either no safety or if there's 2 safeties, that's a throw that you put flat to try to avoid that. But if there's a single safety, you have to throw that to the outside and put a little air under it. And he didn't do it. And again, I suspect he didn't see it, which again tells me he didn't get his eyes to the right spot. It's an RPO, so you got to get your eyes on the second level, check what's going on there. He did that right, but as soon as you decide to make that throw, your next eye spot, you have to move your eyes, check the safety, and throw it away from where that safety's going. And he didn't do it. And again, those 3 plays really determine the football game.
Yeah, because other than that, UNC played pretty well offensively. We'll get into some of the defensive issues later.
We could add a 4th play, by the way, and that's Howell scrambling at the end of the second quarter, which cost him 11 seconds, which meant they had to kick a field goal instead of taking. They'd probably gotten at least 2 more shots into the end zone.
And this offense can score there.
Yeah.
We'll mix that in with a little takeaway later. I want to take a second to talk about our friends over at Blue Shark Vodka, small family-owned vodka company based out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Connor Barth, former UNC kicker, involved in the company, made with North Carolina sweet corn to create the world's smoothest vodka. Check it out. Ross Martin likes to mix up a little blackberry lemon cocktail, maybe throw a little basil leaf in there. Each batch of the vodka, triple filtered, smooth, clean finish that us over at Inside Carolina really, really enjoy. Shout out to them bringing you this post-game live show with myself, Gregory Hall, and our X's and O's expert, Jason Staples. Again, if you're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook right now, get your questions in. Producer in the room, Grant Hughes. John's up in Notre Dame. We're going to get to your questions later. We're going to transition right now into our 3 players of the game. Like we said, offense played really great. Defense, not so much. So our 3 players, we got 3 plus 1 here. We're going to break the rules since Ross isn't here telling us what to do. Jason, give me one of your players of the game.
Yeah, it definitely isn't a guy on defense because I don't think anybody on defense earned anywhere close to this list. But
sadly, not tonight.
Number 1 is Josh Downs, and despite that one drop on the on that critical sequence of 3 plays, despite that one drop, the guy continues to just make plays for Carolina, and he looks like you're putting it in fast forward whenever he gets the ball in his hands, and he made some big plays again.
142 yards. I mean, he caught a ball off his face mask twice.
Yeah. So, I mean, 12 targets, 10 catches.
1 was overthrown, 1 was a drop.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a pretty good outing. And and that's despite the fact that Notre Dame was committed to bracketing him all game.
He was double covered almost the whole night.
Yeah, there were multiple plays where you could see the safety rotating over top of him just to get into bracket position.
Which normally happens to outside receivers.
Right, and so Notre Dame went out of their way to take him away. Still 142 yards receiving, still making big plays.
I wonder if there's after the catch numbers here. Keep going.
Yeah, so I mean that would be my number 1 guy. My number 2 guy, I'm going to go ahead there while you're looking that up. My number 2 guy on this would be Ty Chandler, who I thought played a whale of a game in this game. Averaged, let me see here, averaged 5.5 yards per carry. Had that long of 53 where he just ran away from the defense. Also, really, they did a better job of getting him involved in the passing game in this game, even though one of them didn't hit. There was that wheel route up the sideline in the first quarter that Howell just missed. And if he makes, again, there's so many plays in this game where Howell or the Carolina team in general were just, I mean, you're talking about inches off. He makes that play, he makes that throw. Chandler has a chance to run away and score in that one as well. But another 18-yard catch at another point in the game, and that was a heck of a catch again. He took a shot on that. So that's the second guy that I would have on that list. And then, of course, the third guy is Howell himself.
Sam Howell, yeah.
Yeah, Howell played a really good football game. I mean, quarterback rating of 174.
Is that good?
That's getting it done.
I wonder what his average has to be at this point.
Yeah, and not only 341 yards passing and a passer rating of 174, but 101 yards rushing. Again, the team's leading rusher.
Add
yet
24
again.
of those for sacks.
Yeah.
Non-sack yards, he's at 124 yards.
125.
Yeah, 125 yards with a touchdown. That 31-yard, which was a scramble, he avoided 2 sacks.
Yeah, what in the world was that?
He just was looking downfield, and we were like, is he going to throw it? But there was no one there. It looked like a 4 verts.
Yeah.
And then he just ran straight, and there was great. The receivers just turned around and started blocking.
Yeah, great job.
Receivers did a great job blocking tonight.
Yeah, the receivers. I thought overall the receivers played well tonight. And they gave Howell a lot of support. They made critical catches over and over again. I think there were 2 drops in this game. So this was a solid outing by the entire Carolina passing offense. And again, that starts with Howell. The one big mistake, obviously, and unfortunately, the way things are for Carolina right now, if Howell doesn't play perfect, they don't win games right now. But those would be the 3. And of course, there's that honorable mention I did want to get in there, and that's Josh Azudu, who I thought played his butt off in this game. And you could see him actually exercising a lot of leadership in this game. He was very vocal.
The offensive line did a much better job at communicating tonight than they have all season. I mean, only 2 sacks, which, I mean, Notre Dame wasn't really getting that much pressure on Sam. Most of it was coverage pressure. We talked about that off camera. Which, I mean, their secondary did a really good job without Kyle Hamilton. I think their coaching staff should be happy with kind of how they performed outside of a few plays. But yeah, that play with Josh Azudu on that Josh Downs bubble, I mean, he laid out that defender. And it was perfect time. If he's a second earlier, it's probably a penalty. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, it was literally bang, bang, and he laid out that
And if he's
man.
anywhere later, then that's a tackle. He misses him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is
timed perfectly.
That's a good example of what he brings to the table. There are a few other plays in this game where he really stood out to me. And again, his leadership and really taking ownership of the offensive line in there really stood out to me. I thought Azudu played really well. But one thing, in talking about what Notre Dame did defensively, is they didn't try to pressure Howell that much. They brought 4 a lot in this game.
They maybe blitzed 1 or 2 times that I saw off the top of my head.
What they were trying to do is make sure that Carolina didn't get a bunch of big plays, and they were pretty successful in that. I mean, you look at the long on the day in terms of passing. There's that little wheel route on the rub to Downs, and then you had the one long run by Chandler.
I mean, UNC had 16 big plays here.
Yeah, and I mean that's below the number that you would normally expect with as successful a night.
Any other offense, the defense is like, 16 big plays, but 16 big plays allowed to Carolina. You're like, all right, we kind of subdued them a little bit.
Yeah, well, and again, it's the size of those big plays. If you look at that, it's 19, 15, 18, 10, 10, 14, 11, 14.
Yep.
Those are big plays.
30 yards. And
those are big plays that the defense is willing to give up. Mm-hmm. You can give up a 15-yarder here and there. You don't want to, but you can give that. What you can't give up is the 60-yarder or the 91-yarder.
We didn't plan that, by the way.
You can't give those up. And what Notre Dame did is they decided that they were going to force North Carolina to execute all the way down the field and try to play over the top on some of this stuff.
Right.
And that's really why you wound up with 7+ yards per play. What was it? 7.7 yards per play.
9.5 in the second half.
And only 34 points. That's how you wind up with that, is that they forced Carolina to execute down when they got inside the red zone. They took that gamble and ultimately won that gamble.
All right, we're going to get to some of your questions here. Just a few before we talk about our other sponsor, Jimmy's Famous Seafood. Grant, you got a couple here that we can lay on us that we can tackle real quickly?
Yes. This one is for Jason.
All right.
And it's from Nick. Notre Dame, from what I saw, didn't run many exotic run schemes and got yards and whatever they wanted. What did UNC not do to stop the base run scheme, and what's their deal with mobile quarterbacks?
The mobile quarterback question we've been answering for 3 years now.
Oh, I've been answering that mobile quarterback question for 9 years now. So, yeah.
But yeah, that's a good question considering that Kyron Williams really just ran up the middle. Outside of the 91-yard run where they let him do his thing. So it's a question for you, so go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, the biggest problem is gap discipline, where these guys are not so in what you've got to do to have any success as a run defense at any level, every player has certain responsibilities to fill gaps. If you get washed out of your gap, so if you're responsible for the gap between the center and the guard, and you're in that gap, that's fine, but you can't get washed down the line of scrimmage, say 2 yards, because that's going to create a seam. So what's happening right now to Carolina a lot, and you can see this over and over again, is you'll see a player starting to get upfield or whatever, but he gets turned a little bit, or he'll get washed, a yard and a half down the line of scrimmage, and that's opening up some seams. So that's the biggest thing, is just you're seeing some of those defensive linemen kind of get piled together at times, and that's one of the things that can happen in a tight front. That's one of the things that they're running, where you're playing those 3 bigs on the interior, trying to create a pile on the inside. But if you get washed too much, and then your backers are not really, really good in filling that extra gap and filling it on time, you're going to wind up with seams, and any good back is going to be able to come through that seam. So to me, a lot of this is just little fundamentals on the offensive or on the defensive side, where the defensive line is maybe getting washed out of a gap here. One player will be moved a yard beyond where he needs to be. Then you'll get a backer who's just a little late getting to his gap.
Yep.
Or a lot of times I'm still seeing false steps from backers where they're stepping toward the line of scrimmage too early.
Way too early.
Yeah, some of these things are happening where, again, it's these fundamentals that if you're just off by a yard, off by a half a yard, in today's game, if there's a good back, that seam is going to turn into a 10, 12-yard gain. So that's the biggest thing. On the quarterback side, mobile quarterbacks are always going to be a problem for any defense. And especially if you have to worry about the quarterback throwing at all. And actually the funny thing is, you look at this, it wasn't Buckner who was the real problem.
No, they stopped Buckner.
Yeah,
they stopped him.
Buckner's 4 carries for 16 yards. I can live with that. It was the quarterback who can throw that actually gave them trouble with his legs.
21-yard touchdown run.
That 21-yard touchdown run was the one. And on that one, what happened is the backside backer who's responsible for the gap that the quarterback came through. So again, in pass rush, everybody has gaps, and even the guys who are dropping in coverage have responsibility for where the quarterback might end up. Because of the pump fake, there was a little pump and go on the outside here, and then Cone didn't like what happened with the coverage. When he pumped, that backside backer went in the direction of the pump about 4 yards, and that put him out of angle, and Cone was able to beat him to the corner. So
and it wasn't a run play, but kind of the issues there seem to be they're not reacting, they're trying to anticipate, and it's getting them out of where they should be. Jacarius Conley read that or jumped that bubble screen, whether he was going for the ball or anticipating the end cut, not really sure, but he wasn't reacting to what the player was going to do after he got the ball. He jumped it. Then he basically forced him outside, which is where the receiver wants to go anyway. And whoever was in coverage there had a blocker to deal with and had the receiver. And it was part of that 3-play, 75-yard drive that Jack Cohen 21-yard touchdown run later. So it's the defenders not being as reactionary as they might need to be to help fix some of these mistakes.
Well, and that's actually a good example of gap discipline just out wide.
Yeah.
Because it's the same thing. And the way
You're
that's going to
responsible for
work,
your one man.
the corner there has the outside leverage. The corner is going to try to force things back in, and actually he's going to try to keep that outside arm clear and then keep pressure here and then let it stretch out to the sideline. But he can't let anything outside him vertically. So that's his responsibility, is contain and then stretch it to the sideline. And then the inside safety, his job is to take a shallow angle and press that guy to his corner help and then tackle inside out. What he can't do is get too vertical. And again, that's an example on the width on the wide side, so you can see that. So you can see sort of
there's more space
to see what the mistake was. That's the same kind of mistake that we're seeing with some of the gap stuff in the box. And these are just fundamental things that, again, some of these guys are young. Conley's a young guy.
Sure.
Some of these guys are young, and some of them, though, are not as young and they're still making some of these mistakes. And these are things that just have to get cleaned up if you're going to be a really good run defense and a good defense in general.
All right. We're going to get to a few more questions later. I want to take a second here to talk about Jimmy's famous seafood.
Seafood sounds pretty good right now.
If you don't know about Jimmy's famous seafood, some of the best crab cakes maybe the world. I don't know. I haven't had crab cakes cross country here, but big UNC fans. You'll see them on Twitter. Their support: Armando Baycott, Dawson Garcia, nationwide shipping. Wherever you are in the country, you can get some Jimmy's famous seafood. I know our basketball guy, Sherrell McMillan, loves himself some Jimmy's famous seafood. Crab cakes, crabs, crab cake egg rolls, right? You can get some crab legs, or you can have yourself a crab leg egg roll if you wanted to. Crab cake egg roll, my bad. They're also a sponsor of the live show, so shout out to them. We're going to get back into it here. 3 takeaways. We've already kind of mentioned some of the stuff throughout the show, but we're going to consolidate it here for you. 3 takeaways. Jason, go ahead, get us started with 1.
The first one is that the offense at this point, there are just too many critical mistakes in situations.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of coaches will emphasize this, that you can dominate a game and then lose a few key situations and lose the game.
3 to 5 plays, right?
And this is one of those coaches that emphasizes that and has emphasized that for years. It's Mac Brown. Mm-hmm. You have to win key situations. And right now, especially on the offensive side, they're losing too many of those key situations. Again, that critical drop, interception where your eyes aren't perfect.
Clock management.
Right, clock management at the end of the half, taking a sack at the end of the game, even though, again, they're down by 10 there, so it doesn't matter as much. Little things like that, losing in those key situations is killer. So that's number one, is that this team needs to be better in understanding situational football and also making sure that it doesn't make the critical mistake that you can't recover from.
Yep.
It's sort of like golf. You're gonna miss shots. You just can't miss shots that are gonna put you in the drink.
Yeah, you can miss the putt from 15 feet, and maybe that would later in the round set you up for failure. But if you miss in the third hole, it's fine. If on the 18th hole you take your tee shot into the water, bye Masters green jacket.
It's where you miss, right? So you don't want to miss in the wrong spots. You don't want to miss in the wrong situations. The kinds of misses that you have are critical.
Yeah.
So right now they're having trouble getting out of their own way in key situations, and you can't always tell which one is going to be the key situation, but they're losing too many of those key situations, and that's costing them football games.
Yeah, and the offense played great. Best game of the season probably. I mean, they got the ball to the guys not named Josh Downs. Four receivers not named Josh Downs got touches today. That's important. I mean, Justin Olsen, first catch of the game. I don't know if anyone predicted that, but he was active. Antoine Green was active, the 33-yard touchdown.
5 catches for Green is career high.
Ty Chandler was great. So the offense, I mean, Sam Howell used his legs, showed his Cam Newton abilities there, right? Like, the offense played really good. And then that goes into my takeaway here. The defense, just anemic. I mean, 9 yards a carry to Kyron Williams. If you take away the 91-yard carry, he's still over 7 yards for a team that UNC allowed on the ground. Just too many lapses. We talked about the Jacarius Conley play. We talked about the 91-yard touchdown run where Tamon Fox wasn't necessarily a lapse, but it was certainly a missed tackle. Can't let a back who's half the size of you, obviously I'm hyperbolizing there, pummel you into the ground. The defense lost them this game. Yes, the offensive issues were critical, but the defense just couldn't. Yeah, outside of the 1 3 and out, that was important. As far as we're talking about situational football here, that 3 and out was necessary. But outside of that, didn't help the offense or their team at all.
Yeah, and defensively, I mean, it's real simple. I mean, some of it is just a matter of pride and winning one-on-ones.
Yeah.
You've got one job. You do that job. And you have to win doing that job. And there's too much of other things going on that defense where tackling, the tackling needs to be better, and in order for the tackling to be better, you have to have better angles.
Right.
Well, in order to have better angles, you have to be doing your job exactly as you're coached. And then in order to do that and not get beat, even in the process of that, you have to do that while being physically dominant in the process of that. So you've got to actually win those one-on-ones, and they're not winning one-on-ones. You get a little back shoulder fade right there in good coverage, not enough to win the one-on-one.
Right.
Over and over again, there are you've got, again, you brought up the Fox getting stiff arm there. You're one-on-one in space with the back. You have to get him on the ground.
Could win the game. Could be.
All of these things, it's just those small little things. They add up for the defense, and it's just too much. Again, winning your one-on-ones, just doing your basic assignment, all of that stuff adds up so that you don't end up giving up these catastrophic plays.
And when we were going over the players of the game, yes, there were no defenders there because no one really made a difference in this game. Yes, Cam Kelly had a really good game, 12 tackles, 11 solo tackles, but he kind of just did his job, what was expected. Gio Biggers had that big stop on 3rd down, got into the backfield. But then on 4th down, we already talked about it, face mask on Trey Morrison, Notre Dame scores in the next play, right? So there were no turnovers, obviously.
Situations.
There were no difference makers on the defensive side of the ball, which is an issue. And then here we'll talk about our third takeaway. Jason, I'll give you this one.
You got to be able to finish.
Both sides.
Both sides of the ball. This is a game where it's not just about being in the right spot. It's not just about doing your job. It's about finishing. And this team has not learned how to finish. And, I mean, that's as simple as I can put it. They've got to figure out how to finish and give that additional effort to take the pride necessary during the week to learn how to finish. Yep. And this is an immature team. You can see that they just have not
with
quite,
veteran leaders though.
Well, they've got veterans. I'm not sure that they have a whole lot of veteran leaders. I think they've got one or two.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't know that they've got a ton of veteran leaders. They've got veterans.
I guess if they were veteran leaders, we probably wouldn't be talking about these minor
exactly.
issues here. And it goes to the coaching staff as well.
Yeah. So this is an immature team, regardless of how many older guys you have. It's an immature team that has not learned how to finish. And you've got to learn how to finish or you don't win games.
And I tweeted about this entering the fourth quarter. Last year against Notre Dame, it was a tie game at halftime. The offense got stifled in the second half, couldn't score, but the defense allowed 2 extremely long drives in the second half, and Notre Dame ended up winning by 31-17. UNC had the ball down 4 going to the fourth quarter, and then that 3-play span happened of the 91-yard touchdown, interception. That literally happened in the first, 4 plays because of the punt.
Yep.
Right? And it's just like, couldn't finish the game. And this was a team where last 2 years, that fourth quarter was different. Everyone was talking about it. National broadcasts were talking about it. It was like, there's something about this team in the fourth quarter. And outside of maybe the Miami game, since that Notre Dame game, the fourth quarter in this team just hasn't been there.
Well, even in the Miami game, Miami
won
the second half, and Miami very nearly came back and won that game. I mean, Carolina was holding on. Mm-hmm. This is not a team that has been able to finish anything. I mean, you've got to finish drives, you've got to finish 3 and outs, you've got to finish all of these things. You've got to finish plays when you've got an opportunity to get a pass breakup on a one-on-one, things like that. This is a team that's not finishing. And that's really the difference right now. So, to me, that's the third and really the biggest thing. They've got to learn the effort level and the details. And again, this is during the week to be able to make that happen and finish on game day.
And this is coming off a bye week, right? So we thought things were going to be fixed. They just weren't defensively. Offensively, yes. Play calling was better. Longo talked about his own play calling on Monday, this past Monday, in his press conference. He talked about it. He's like, look, I looked at myself. I needed to be a better first down play caller. I think he was. When you look at some of the screens of Josh Downs, you look at the fake screen with the 2 verts, they got Antoine Green wide open. Offensive play calling was there. Defense across the board, it just wasn't. It started from the beginning. Notre Dame is not an explosive offense, right? You take away that 91-yard run, and they were just picking UNC apart defensively, slowly, methodical, exactly what they did last year and exactly what they wanted to do this year. We're going to answer some more questions now. We see you guys on Facebook. We see you guys on YouTube and Instagram. We appreciate you checking us out here. I know it's late, disappointing loss. Maybe expected, but still there was opportunity there to win the game. Grant, hit us with some more questions.
This one is from Jacob. What are you guys seeing from Sam Howell? He has surely improved as a runner, but seems to be occasionally forcing passes to his first read.
So this is how I view it. Sam knows he needs to be perfect, and that's hard and stressful and strenuous on anyone. And I think it's causing him or forcing him to do too much at times, which we see when taking sacks, right? If you look at Pro Football Focus, the sacks that are getting put on him, those numbers have increased because he's like, look, I got to make something happen. A lot of it's they've been playing behind sometimes, like tonight. But then, Jason, I'm sure this will be your answer. The eye discipline is just not there.
Yep.
And that's what scouts are looking for. And he still has the potential is there. We know what he's capable of. But that's kind of what's going on. He's being forced to do too much, and then when he has to make the game-winning play or he has to do things that are maybe not normal or the simple things, it all goes to the eye discipline.
Yeah, so the eye discipline is the first thing that I think about on this. You have to, as a third-year starter, you have to make sure that your eyes are in the right place and that you're not making some of the mistakes that he's made. The other thing that has been surprising to me is the past 2 years, prior 2 years, he was the best deep ball thrower in America, and it wasn't close.
Oh. I mean, I think he still leads the FBS, and since he's became the starter his freshman year, he leads the FBS in touchdown throws over 25 yards.
Yeah, and in football, Pro Football Focus's big time throws category, he's still number 1 over the past 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, he's phenomenal at
it. Excuse me.
Bless you.
So if you think about that, go back through the year though. How many long plays has he actually had? How many
Define
deep,
long.
So how many deep balls? So
will the Antoine Green one
your,
count?
Your Antoine Green one. I mean, yeah, that counts.
A lot of them are Josh Downs short, and then he's doing the work.
Although he's completely wide open there, so that's not one that you quite credit. But how many times are you seeing guys where Ty Chandler going up the sideline on a wheel route, slightly overthrown?
Yep, a lot of overthrows.
The Josh Downs, there's a Josh Downs one where it was just, again, slightly overthrown. There have been just a lot of little misses on some of the throws where he's just been dynamic the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, so the first thing is eye discipline. The other thing that tells me is, again, you got a guy that's pressing and that's not comfortable in terms of the positions he's throwing from in the pocket, the timing situation, and also being familiar with the receivers. Mm-hmm. There's just, it's a sync issue where he's been really good, but he's not been quite as a passer what he's been or what he was last year, partly because of some of those sync issues. So those are the two things that have stood out to me. But again, still a really, really good quarterback and a really good player.
How many other quarterbacks in the country are you taking over Sam Howell? Not many.
No, you could probably count that group on one hand this year.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So it's like, and we talk about Sam's been great, but there's just those little mistakes. And obviously there's the defensive side of it too. Grant, hit us with another one, and we'll wrap up here shortly.
All right, this one comes from Steven. Who is more to blame for the failures on defense, the execution amongst the players or the coaching staff?
That's not an either or.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jay Bateman answered that question in his press conference, and he put it on both. And I think it is both.
Well, the execution from the players is on the coaching staff. So a lot of fans don't understand this. That when coaches talk about, well, we had the right call, but we didn't execute it, the coach is not saying, well, it ain't my fault.
No, he didn't get the players in the right position or teach them or coach them enough to execute properly.
Right. What that means is we had the call that should have our players in the position to make the plays, but we didn't coach them well enough and we didn't hold them accountable well enough, and we didn't force them to do the things that would be necessary for them to make those plays. And again, I still think right now the biggest problem with this team as a whole goes down to accountability. And that's on both sides of the ball. Now, that goes back to leadership. Mm-hmm. If you have team leaders that are holding every other player accountable, if your best players are veteran players who are team leaders and they can basically come at the younger guys or guys who are screwing up and require that they raise their level of play. I mean, this is the Michael Jordan factor, right? Jordan makes everybody else around him better. Well, how did he do that? Because everybody was terrified of him.
Sure.
Right? You don't want to disappoint Mike. When that's your guy and that's the leadership you get, you have real accountability. I don't see a lot of that on this team on either side of the ball. And so, and if you don't have that naturally coming from the players, then the coaching staff has to step in and be harder on the team until that leadership develops. And again, I go through the offensive line. I look at some of the assignments and assignment soundness on the defensive side across the board. When I look at linebackers in particular, some of the stuff up front, some of the mistakes in communication that they've had on the back end, all of these things boil down ultimately to a problem of accountability, which that gets back to, is it execution? Yes. That's a bigger problem than play calling on either side of the ball. The play calling has been fine.
Sure.
But execution has not. But the execution is also on the coaches. The coaches have to get the players to rep these things enough where they're reacting and responding within the system and within what they're asking them to do better than they have been.
I think Brian Kelly said this earlier in the week before the game. I don't know if I've seen a team as deep on the defensive side of the ball. They run, they're athletic. Individually, we were matching them up against the teams that we played. They have Cincinnati talent, they have Florida State talent. They have a little bit of everything, which, I mean, on paper and even when we know this team has talent. And then he said, why it hasn't gone their way, that's not my job to figure out. It's not his job to figure out. He exploited it tonight.
Shots
Notre Dame
fired.
exploited it tonight. The coaching staff's got to figure it out. We thought they would have maybe had some of it figured out over the bye week. Certainly haven't. So moving forward, let's wrap up here. Last thing, what does this 10-point loss on the road to Notre Dame mean moving forward, considering you've got Wake Forest coming to town, who's 8-0 for the first time in school history. You go on the road to Pitt. Then you take on Wofford. Then you go on the road down over to Raleigh, take on NC State. 3 underdog games, most likely. Probably, I mean, definitely. Still a chance at the Coastal out there with Pitt losing.
Not mathematically eliminated.
If you beat Pitt,
So you're telling me there's a chance?
there technically is a chance. This team sits at 4-4, and there's a chance. As far as if you beat Pitt, you have the tiebreaker over Pitt. You need Pitt to lose to somebody else, preferably Virginia, who you beat and have the tiebreaker over. So you could be, I mean, you could technically lose to Wake. It's a non-conference game. So this team could be 7-5 and be Coastal Division champions.
They could be. But
Just saying.
let's get back to the realm of the probable here.
Just as far as looking ahead.
What
yes.
does this loss mean?
What does it mean going forward?
It means you're 4-4 and fighting for your bowl life. Fighting for bowl eligibility.
Sadly, that's the more realistic option for UNC fans listening out there.
Now, there's not a game left on the schedule that this Carolina team can't win.
Yeah.
This team could
They could've won
absolutely.
tonight.
This team absolutely could finish 8-4. Mm-hmm. Do you expect them to finish 8-4? Do I expect them to finish 8-4? No, because they're only going to be favored over Wofford. So they're going to have to pull an upset essentially to make a bowl from here, and they've not won a series of games in which they've been the favorite. So this means that they're going to have to figure out what their leadership situation is. They're going to have to figure out how they're going to manage to pull together and actually play well enough to beat the better teams on their schedule. This schedule is backloaded.
Oh, yeah.
Hardcore. The better teams on the schedule started with Notre Dame. They needed to start the season better. Now, by not winning this game, they've put their backs against the wall, and they're going to have to play better against the better teams. They can win those games, but they're going to actually have to play better than they did tonight on both sides of the ball. They're going to have to play better to win any of those games other than Wofford, and they're going to have to win at least one of them in order to make a bowl. So that's what it means.
I think you would have preferred a performance similar to Virginia Tech than what you got tonight, right? Because with that Virginia Tech game, it was like, all right, the defense gave up some points early, but they figured it out, and they still held a college football opponent to 17 points, which if you've been watching college football,
That's pretty good.
that's pretty good.
Even
Iowa.
Even Virginia Tech, even if it's Virginia Tech you're playing against.
Well, even Iowa, one of the best defenses in the country, gave up 27 to Wisconsin today, right? So it's like, it's hard to play defense in college football and hold opponents to 17 points. So I think you would have taken a defensive performance that was solid, and then the offense being like, man, those few key plays. But if you got the offense playing your best game of the season and your defense, like I said earlier, just being anemic.
They gave up 27 points in the second half.
Yeah. I mean, they gave up 9.5 or 6 yards per play in the second half. Yes, they were down 4 entering the fourth quarter, but they were in the driver's seat, and the offense didn't do them any favors, but the defense definitely didn't do them any favors. So yes, we saw some signs of improvement on the offensive side of the ball. We saw some defensive regression. I mean, Greg Barnes tweeted that there's a literal and a very easy argument to make that this defense has regressed for the second straight year, which is not what you want considering the talent increase. When talent's increasing, your defense shouldn't be regressing. So yeah, moving forward, it's going to be tough.
How much do they miss Surratt right
Oh yeah, I mean he's an athletic freak that can make plays all over the field.
We talk about a talent increase, but I think we've seen how important he was
I mean,
defensively.
There's no legit pass rush on this team, and he was one of the best pass rushers on the team last year.
And he was an eraser. And what they're missing right now, what this defense is really missing, is a true difference maker. They've got some young guys who could potentially grow into that, but they really are missing a true difference maker who can erase mistakes by his teammates. They don't have that at any of the three levels right now. They don't have a defensive lineman who can, well, you got a missed coverage back there. It doesn't matter because he got to the quarterback. They don't have a linebacker who can erase mistakes by the defensive line, and they don't have anybody in the secondary that is erasing mistakes. So, yeah, we talk about a talent upgrade, but who's special right now?
That's something we might have to talk about on Tuesday on the beat in your game plan. All right, we're going to wrap it up. We've been going a little over than usual, but a lot to talk about considering that this wasn't a blowout, but it certainly was a game UNC shouldn't have lost by 10 considering what happened in the game. We appreciate you watching this late. Thank you to Blue Shark Vodka, Jimmy's Famous Seafood, Johnny T-Shirt as always for sponsoring Inside Carolina. We will see you guys next week. I guess we won't. Ross will be back. But yeah, thanks again. Shout out to everyone watching. Have a good night. Yeah, that's about it.